Welcome, ladies. Welcome to Making Work Work, Bridging Generations on the Job. I was just having a conversation with a cohort in the audience just about how important this topic is and how much goes along, all the challenges that go along with this topic. And so I'm excited to share our perspectives up here with these amazing, very seasoned women. And I thank you all for attending. First, I'd like to start by introducing each of us. My name is Kuhn. I'm the founder of Thrive. My background is public accounting, and so I often say that I have the perspectives of both sides. I have the being in the trenches and working 80-hour work weeks, and now I have the consulting those people who are doing it and giving them how to move beyond that and still be successful and accomplish a lot. Next to me is Pam Tillman. We were introduced to her earlier. She's an attorney with Meissner, Tierney, Fisher, and Nichols, and has been there for the past 21 years. And down on the end is Stephanie Banks. She is the owner of Banks C-Suite and previously spent 13 years with Molson Coors, dealing with both U.S. and international tax. And then in between these two is Catherine Burke Fink. She's been working in the family business for the last 3 years. She's the director of retail at Burke Candy and Ingredients that was started in 1929 by her great-grandfather. So talk about a lot of generations. I'm looking forward to that insight. If any of you would like to know a little more about the panel or myself, please visit BizTimes, and you can find more information on our bios there. So welcome, ladies. The intention behind this conversation is to just have conversations around the topic and to share our experiences and to bring to light some of the challenges that are facing 4 generations that are currently in the workplace. And so let's jump in. Like I said, there are a lot of things we can talk about. There are a lot of dynamics going on, and I hear a lot of stories. My husband and I own a business that's been in our family for 4 generations. We have a lot of generations working there, and I hear a lot of the challenges. But what we want to do today is bring to light some of how you can bridge those challenges. And so, panel, what does it look like to shift our focus to creating bridges and finding commonalities in the workplace instead of collecting data points that reinforce and build barriers between us? Doesn't that
I can start. Well, thank you, BizTimes, for having me today. Also, my last name is not hyphenated. I just kept Burke in the name, so I was part of the family. I think prior to coming to my family business, I did work on the corporate side. So I worked for Dyson Vacuums and some ad agencies, Leo Burnett and Upshot, which also had a range of generations in those. But I think what kind of we've heard today is piquing your interest and curiosity. I think, why are some of these people staying in the job or with the company for so long? And sometimes it's frustrating when you're wanting to get promoted and your boss says, well, you can't get promoted till I get promoted, which has to be the next person has to get promoted. And so I think it's talking to the different people within your workplace, or when you want to try and leave, how to get to that next level, because you're the one picking, you kind of can pick your future, you can pick the company, and so ask those questions when you are in that interview or even in that one-on-one with your boss of how do I continue, to move forward and get more experience and be given that autonomy and that time to show you that I am worth being part of this team. And so I think kind of navigating that within your workplace can go a long way to help bridge also understanding why they're where they are, why you are where you are.
I think for me it was more so trying to pair up with people. So I worked for a beer company for a really long time, and so they had a lot of people there who were celebrating their 20-year, 30-year, 40-year work anniversary, and I was like, I haven't been alive that long. That is awesome for you, but I know there were things that they didn't like, so they may not like every time there's a new update with technology or software. So how can I learn the stuff that you know that I don't know, and how can I show you how to use, this tax software? Or if you decide you don't want to go in it at all, that'll just be our little agreement, and I'll help you out with this stuff, and you'll help me out with all the company history that's going back 200 years that I'm not gonna, have the time to go back and really thoroughly look through or have the proper context to understand, because again, I wasn't alive. So that was kind of my strategy. It worked out pretty well.
But now, Stephanie, you also said that history really helped you. And so, oftentimes we always say, oh, they're old and stodgy, I'm young, I know what it takes, I have all these ideas, get out of my way, old stodgy person. And so you had a different experience where you integrated with the older generation a little bit differently. Can you tell us how you did that and how that benefited you in that environment?
Yeah, so just before this started, I was outside waving and smiling to people because I think it's illegal not to say hello to everybody. I'm from New Orleans, and I grew up where you're walking down the street, somebody's standing on the porch, you have to say hello to them. It doesn't matter if you don't know them or not. See them again, you have to say hello, and you're probably also asking them how they're doing, which is the same as saying hello. And so I was always speaking to everyone. If I packed my lunch, I'd sit in the break room and eat my lunch there. And it was typically the older people who were doing that because everybody else wanted to go out for lunch downtown. I lived in Denver for 10 years, so at that office, it was a location where there was kind of everything at your fingertips. So most of the young people were going out for lunch every single day. The older people were not, and I was just hanging out with them. And they love to tell stories, and when they get really fired up, they tell really good and juicy stories. So it was really helpful, but then I realized that, if there was something that I wanted to do, a new project, then I could go to them to kind of figure out, okay, who maybe proposed something like this before, who didn't like it, who shot it down, and I could sort of get some insight and intel before I proposed the thing, and I could have a lot of the kinks worked out already.
And so, now Pam, you've been an attorney for 21 years. I'm sure you've run the gamut of, Gen Zers to baby boomers. And so dealing with different companies, especially family businesses, what did you find worked when you were trying to bring people together and show them, you really have a lot more in common than you think you do? And how can you tap into having them look for those commonalities versus finding the division?
So I started off at a large firm where I practiced about 3 years, and I realized, not early on, but pretty, within a year or two, that the older, stodgy men in an office outside of Milwaukee was going to really be making the decisions about whether I made partner and moved up in the firm. And to me, that just didn't sit right. And so I had looked around for making a change, and knowing that I needed to find a firm that just was a better fit for me. And I found the firm that I'm at, and you're right, there's still the various generations, but it's knowing that there are differences. I think when I first started off, it was this work mentality, and I was even trying to make changes in contrast to, I'll call the older partners, male partners that, were working 7 days a week and billing, hundreds and thousands of hours in a month. I realized that at the end of the day, I could only sustain that for so long. And I do see, as millennials and Gen Zers have come on board, they were almost, they were more direct, and especially Gen Zers. They really do want a work-life balance, and it was almost taught to them in some way. I felt like law schools, and maybe I don't know what other schools were like, but they're actually now kind of teaching this like work-life balance, and that was like mind blown to me, because I would have never, when I first started off, thought that I could even voice to my partners that I needed, I needed this balance. Because quite honestly, I was the first female partner that they had probably in like 10 years, before I made partner. And, most, the male attorneys there had stay-at-home wives and who did the cooking and the cleaning and for them. So to them it wasn't, they didn't really need to speak the work-life balance. They had the balance kind of given to them. I was trying to, I was trying to find my way, because I knew I needed some sustainability. And actually I've learned a lot from Gen Zers, because they are more vocal. And it's kind of taught me and my older partners that that we actually do need to take this into consideration. It's definitely benefited me, and I think the older, what I'll call older group of attorneys, because it's really kind of forced us. When we had during the pandemic, when there was a lot of people leaving jobs and moving around, and I think every industry experienced it, and at least based on who I've spoken with. I know firms had a lot of people moving around, and just talking to some of my friends and colleagues in other industries, they had a lot of movement around. And I think part of that driver was the younger generations being more vocal about wanting this work-life balance, and I think firms have realized that they need to kind of embrace it and make changes accordingly. So, I think there was a lot of benefits from having these multi-generations kind of working. They still are very hard. They sometimes get a bad rap, because they get it's the stereotypical things that they don't work hard enough, but really do. I mean, if you put yourself through law school and internships and all that stuff, what hard work is. So I think they get a bit of a bad rap, but
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's more how they do it just looks differently.
Yes.
And they give themselves permission to do it differently. And I wish I had that acuity, that awareness when I was in public accounting, because I did the 80+ hour work weeks. I was the yes person. I was the take on more than I could. I mean, I did audit and tax, so I was out in the field doing audit and coming back and doing tax, and I was climbing the ladder. These are all, in my generation, Gen X was all, these are the boxes you check, and then you go through life and you check, and then the heavens open and the angels descend upon you. And so I get there, and my heaven opening and my angels descending on me was going through a divorce and finding myself at 2 in the morning throwing up blood, with my head hanging in the toilet. And so that was the contrast between where I thought all these checked boxes would get me and where reality brought me. And it was like, okay, this isn't sustainable. I can't continue to do this. You know, I had a bag packed. Monday I was on a plane, and Friday, if I wasn't laid over somewhere, I would get home. And I really admire the fact that this new generation is like, girl, why did you do that? Like, what was wrong with you? Like, you know, who does that to themselves? But that was my generation. You worked, and you didn't say no. If a partner came in at midnight and said, I need this by tomorrow, you were like, okay, let's get at it. I mean,
Right.
yeah. And so we're seeing, and I, you know, especially, you know, I read Deloitte Insights a lot, and they say Gen Zers are eager, they want to get stuff done, they want to make an impact. It just doesn't look the same.
Absolutely. They are better at setting boundaries and being vocal about those boundaries. And I think one thing it has taught me is it's created more of an open discussion, you know, at board meetings with my other partners. And we run the kind of the gamut of, we've got at least 3 generations. We don't yet have any Gen Zers partner, but that's going to change. And so we try to impart, we've become much better at having those discussions in the open, and being, you know, I hear things I don't necessarily want to hear sometimes, but, you know, I try to take it, you know, with a grain of salt, and I try to use that information that, and try to help both, you know, my older partners and some of the younger partners, and trying to, you know, because when you have such differing opinions, it's hard to bring people together, but I've seen a more openness in having those conversations versus, I can remember, you know, 10 years ago even, my managing partner not being as receptive, and maybe kind of telling me sometimes how things work. So, but it did give me a little bit more confidence to be, this is what I need and this is what I'm looking for. And yeah, some days I do not do it very effectively. I can't say no, and sometimes, you know, when you have 5 different clients all wanting one thing on, you know, 2 or 3 different days, I'm not saying no, and the associates below me aren't saying no. But I've learned to kind of, you know, embrace. I had a case settle, and I went and I took advantage of it, and I went on a 2.5 week, you know, like 3 mini vacations, and it was I would have never done that like 15 years ago. I was like, I can't check out for that long. So it's taught me life lessons and shown me that, you know, there's a lot to learn from younger generations, just as I've learned a lot about my practice from the older generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a little different take on similar to work from home, but when I was at Dice, so I took my career to marketing because even though I was born in Burke candy, I've been working and making candy since I was little, but my parents had a rule that we had to go get 5 years, minimum of 5 years of our own business experience, and I ended up working for about 10 years with different companies. But so when I was at Dyson, I was there for a couple years in the retail marketing team doing different build outs, and had my own team, had like 2 people below me. And life happened that I wanted to move back. I was living in Chicago and I wanted to move back to Milwaukee for a boy, no longer with me. But seemed exciting at the time. And all of a sudden when I started to make that decision, I started looking at how do I navigate this? No one in Dyson, even though we're a global company, headquarters in Chicago, no one works remotely. Sales team, maybe a little bit, but no one on the marketing team. And so I had to essentially pitch my case to my boss, and I just said, like, look, like, I did a bunch of research on how you can work from home, and no one was really doing that in the marketing at that time, kind of. But I talked to my brother who was in sales. I was like, how do you still prove yourself when you're, at home? So long story short, I went to my boss and said, I would love to stay with the company, but I'm going to be moving to Milwaukee, and can we figure out, it's not too far away, but can we figure out something that would work? I'll call in the meetings, I can come into the office every once in a while, but these are the things that I would like to do. And they had to run it up the chain. I think even James Dyson over in London was like, I don't know. But I got it approved.
See the guy that's like 500 prototypes.
Yes, exactly. He stole the commercials today. And so they approved it, but so for 2 years I was remote by myself, and I'm a very social person, and so there was a bit of that loneliness that came about, and I was like, wait, am I missing those kind of hallway conversations that are happening, or like to get kind of that project done that day, I'm missing those conversations, and I started to just, and Dyson was not set up for tech, so I would sometimes miss meetings because they didn't even have, Microsoft Teams wasn't really even a thing.
Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah. We're using Zoom, whatever. But, so we made it work, and by the time COVID hit and everyone had to go remote, I led a presentation on how to be remote. I don't think I'm an expert, but I would have I would make sure my one-on-ones were very efficient. I would get to, if I didn't know you on my team, I would actually ask questions, even though, sometimes we all don't want small talk, let's just get to the project at hand. But, so I kind of used what I like to do and how I like to have meetings was just get to know that person so that when I'm asking for presenting to them, it was pretty smooth, even though I wasn't sitting right there in person, really being able to even read their facial expressions or whatever. And with some of my the people that were reporting to me, they were just graduates out of college, and so they were part of the Gen Z. And going to remote, was great, but then again, I hit this wall of they were lonely, and so I started to so I was like, okay, well, how do I energize my team and also let them know that I'm here for you, or we all can still work together, even though we can still get a lot done at home. And so I personally just started to do what I had about a 10-minute coffee talk every other day with my teammates of just, it wasn't talked about work, we didn't talk about work, it was just, let's talk about you so you can kind of just ease into the day, and then you could be successful for the rest of the time. And so that was just, Dyson asked everyone to go back to work, and not full time, but I do think that balance of, still find a fine team when you are remote, and also proving that you can all work together and you can add value. But it is difficult sometimes to show, our bosses also hadn't ever really worked remotely, so they were kind of why are you all at home? Are you just on your computers? On your computers, but on Facebook, on Instagram, not paying attention. I want to see your face. I want to be on video. But so it was a challenge with getting our leadership team to even agree to staying remote for a bit longer. And then at the time, during COVID, I decided to make the change to go into my family business, and we are manufacturing. So there is no work remote. You can't make candy from afar. Start 3D printing of our candy. But even in my storefront, you obviously have to be present and be with the people. As you said, people are the most important thing. So but I think kind of bridging that gap between the different generations of, still proving a lot can be done when you're not sitting right in front of someone. But I think trust and autonomy are a few things that in my career that have helped show that, I've been trusted by the leads, and also been able to find something in common with my team that's younger, so.
I feel like COVID was the greatest experiment ever of remote work because our managing partner was not a proponent of working remotely. I mean, he's in the office, was in the office every day, 7 days a week, in a suit. On the weekends he would wear jeans, but it was, not faded jeans. It was, they were probably ironed, and, long sleeve shirt. But he, to this day now, having survived and back in the office for the most part, he actually works a lot from home because he and some of my other partners who did not believe in it were like, oh, you can be a successful attorney and work remotely. And in their eyes, it was just not done. So if you were working at home, you weren't getting work done.
And so I like that you say, it's almost like they have blinders on, and it took, a national or a world epidemic for him to realize and to become flexible in his mindset. And Stephanie, do you have any advice on how younger generations can approach older generations so that they can see things a little differently without having to go through, a worldwide pandemic?
This is interesting. So I brought this folder for a reason. I thought I was a rule follower. I think I technically am, but I only follow the rule if it's to do something right, so maybe I'm not a rule follower. So this folder is something we would have in the office every time a legal entity is formed or the company is, and there's some amalgamation, some merger, dissolution, something is happening. We create one of these, we put all the documents in it, or if it's just a big transaction. And so for my manager, he was a simple guy. He liked this. You open it up, you punch some holes in the paper, you put in there, you stick it in the file cabinet, and if you need it, if it gets to where the file cabinets are full and it's too old, you ship it to Iron Mountain. If you need it back, you go and look on your inventory, you hope you label the box right, and then you call Iron Mountain, 2 days later it shows back up. For me, I was just kind of like, this is a lot. So I started doing an electronic version of these. It would have been in around 2016 because the company had went through this big acquisition, and part of the team that was rolling up to the team in Denver where I was based was here in Milwaukee. And so I was just like, they're asking me for stuff. I can't keep requesting things from Iron Mountain. And, sorting through boxes and scanning things over to them, this is too much. So I started, putting them online, and I told them about it. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm doing these new, like electronic files. And he's just like, you gotta do the paper ones.
He told you no?
He didn't care. He's like, no, it needs to be this because, when the auditors come by, you can just hand them something. That's what they like. Okay. So I kept doing these, and I kept doing the other ones, and then fast forward, 4 years later, when the world shut down, I had been doing all of the new companies that have been formed, and I was also slowly going back through all the Iron Mountain boxes and getting them. And so when everything, we couldn't get into the office, he was so happy that I had been doing these electronic files. And so I think sometimes you just need to go ahead and do it. So I didn't stop doing what he wanted me to do. I just also
So you were following the rules.
I was. But I was also doing what I wanted to do because it made sense.
Right.
So that'd be my suggestion.
And you know what I love about all this, and it was that the earlier panel talked about this, is there were a group of people that ventured out on their own and did their own thing. Like, in this context, we're going to create, I think that's really how we can keep some of the younger generation motivated, because they are deemed, especially Gen Z, the job hoppers. They go from job to job to job. And so a big thing is, how do we keep these people at their job? Because frankly, it's expensive for us to keep rehiring people and training them and stuff like that. And so what can you do to keep them engaged? What can you do to keep them motivated and excited, especially, if it's a job where it's doing similar things from day to day? And you took the initiative upon yourself and said, look, I'm going to do this regardless of whether you buy into it or not. And the panel earlier was like, well, we don't have the ability to design, but we're going to start a little side thing over here within the construct of this company, just because it excites us and it's something we want to do. And so I love that the Gen Zers coming in are thinking that way and have that insight and, taking personal responsibility and how can I make this, gratifying for me and not just rely on the company to make it gratifying for me. And so Catherine, you're in a 4th-generation business and you and your brother helped bring your mom's vision to life. So now on the flip side, here you are with somebody else's vision. And, being younger people, you have all these ideas and you want to make all this impact and you're like, but wait, it's her vision. And so how do you bring someone else's vision to life running through your filter?
Yeah, so like I said, I left Dyson in 2021, but about the year before that, my parents, Burke is headquartered in River West, and so we've been handmaking our candy there for over 20 years. And so it's a family business. We live, breathe, thinking about it all the time, even though I was doing my own thing. I always wanted to be part of it, and my mom she had always kind of talked about, we want to make sure we have the manufacturing in our store, and we have this chocolate waterfall, and we're like, where are you going, Noah's Ark? Like, but then over time, as we all got older, my mom has always been like, we have this great product, we have this great candy, and I want to really showcase that, and like, how do I do that? And so when the location on Silver Spring in Whitefish Bay became available, we had a family meeting, which if any of you are in a family business, you have lots of those. And my parents were like, this is what we're gonna do, but we need your help. And I was working at Dyson doing store build out. So I had experience with working with project managers and different contractors and just different areas. And so we sat down with my mom, and she had told us just, make it fun, make it creative, I want it whimsical. And she can make a decision on a dime, but sometimes you have to show her what it's going to look like versus trying to conceptually talk about it. And for my background, I could conceptually talk about it and be like, all right, yeah, that's it. That's how we're gonna move forward. And so we decided, my brothers and I have 2 brothers, one older, one younger. My younger one's with me in the business, but I decided to leave Dyson because I couldn't do 2 jobs at once. I was trying to launch a store for my family, but also do my day job, and it was just getting overwhelming. So we decided to move forward with a designer and working with, trying to, keep the emotion out of it, even though it's a very emotional thing. Like, this is the future of my parents' life, our lives, and even
A little pressure there.
Yeah, just a little pressure. And even when you're working for corporate, like, you're kind of like, okay, what am I working for? And like, if you do have the passion for what you're doing, like, emotion does come through. And so I think it was navigating emotion. It was also showing that, like, hey, please trust and like give me the space to like pull this together so I can show you what I'm gathering from what you're telling me. So we would have that meeting with my mom, and then we would go to the designer, and Amy Carmen, she's phenomenal, and Tosa, but she really truly listened. And I think it's finding and working with the people around you who can listen and get, in this case, cultivate our vision, and show us like what the store could come to life. And so we knew it needed to be whimsical. She wanted it green. It needed to be inviting. If any of you have ever been to our store, we're working with different generations. Everyone has to say hello. It's about the people, you know. And if you come in, and even if you're working with a customer, please look up. Like I want my employees to look up and greet you. And so that was kind of the energy we wanted to bring to life. And kind of when we presented that to my mom, after years of also discussing, she was actually very happy with where we landed. But it truly was bringing her vision and us executing on it. She was like, look, I've been doing this for a long time. It's now your guys' turn. Like, you're going to do the dirty work in terms of, you know, getting this off and running. And so I think, you know, it's, and not that we had to necessarily prove ourselves to my mom, but like we, you know, going out and working for other companies, I had the experience. I think that helped. I think, you know, working together and listening to listening to all of our ideas helped kind of bridge that gap a bit. And so she kind of relinquished that control, and but yet had the final say at the end of the day still. Which is probably what she really wanted. Right. Like we can go through the revisions and get to where we needed to get to, but it was kind of, we finally were able to get to that point and launch a beautiful store. So.
And you brought up a few critical things when it comes to dealing with multi-generations in one setting, and one was navigating emotion and the other was listening. And I find with navigating emotion, you know, back when I started, it was you leave your home life, you leave your emotions at the door before you walk in. Mm-hmm. So check all of that there, and then you come in and work. And now, you know, especially Gen Z, their emotions are coming, you know, they're happily unpacking and serving, you know, jelly-filled emotions to everybody who can take one. And so when you're in that context of that disparity, especially when it comes to emotions, Stephanie, do you have any experience with that? Now, I know you just started your business, so you went from working in corporate America. So I'm sure there's been a roller coaster of emotions just launching out on your own. And so what advice do you have for people navigating emotions and how to handle those when you are in business? Because frankly, you do have to buffer some of it, because you can't have your client in front of you and just, you know, break out in a sob because you're having a bad day. But so how do you recommend, you know, just really getting a handle on some of that when you're in the workplace or in front of a client?
Yeah, I think for me, this was a difficult lesson that I had to learn, because I think early on, I took things personally because I knew that I was already working really hard. I was going above and beyond. So if there was something where it was really negative or some criticism, it was just like, not that I would lash out, but it would just be very discouraging. Mm-hmm. So I think once I got to the point of realizing, okay, this isn't personal. If this is something where someone is actually trying to give me some feedback to make something better, then I figure out how to sort through that and sift through whatever else they're saying. And if it's not, then I kind of take the approach with the folder and I just do whatever I want to do. But I don't have to push back or put up a fight and always say something about it. I think early on I felt like I always had to defend myself, and honestly that just got very exhausting because it just wasn't healthy for me. I think it caused a lot of resentment to build up, because you know, you just constantly feeling like, okay, I have to show up and put up a fight, defend myself, and it's just not a healthy way to live. Sometimes you don't have to do that because people are actually not really thinking about you anyway, most of the time. Yeah. They have their own stuff going on, it has nothing to do with you, and they say something mean to you and they completely forgot all about it, going about their business. And so I think that was really huge, and some of the people were speaking to it earlier, but it's really just you deciding that you are going to respond based on the outcome that you want to get. So once you decide whatever outcome you want to get, then you should tailor your response to whatever that should be, as opposed to just, you know, deciding to cry or yell, scream, whatever that might be.
I took away a lot from Jenny Just's whole poker, the whole, you know, poker player face, and kind of tailoring your emotions because right, my natural reaction when I first started practicing was, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So I would get feedback and I started crying, and for a firm of all men at the time, they did not know how to react sometimes. And it was, for a while, it was a little bit of a running joke that, let's not talk to Pam about it. She makes her cry. But I did, I had to get a little bit thicker skin and also realize that it was not about me. Men think so differently about things at work. We start ruminating. We think, oh, he said this because he's upset with me and I need to then tailor. It's like, no, they are not that complex. And
Off the record.
yeah. I had a partner who was my age, and I had it was like my aha moment, and we were driving home one day from a hearing, and I said, we were just talking, and I said, I think so-and-so, one of our other partners, has an issue with me doing this. And he said, no, I don't think he does. And I said, no, he said this. He's like, Pam, quite honestly, we don't think like that. We don't immediately, our thoughts are not like 5 steps ahead in terms of we say one thing and then, we're like 5, we're thinking, well, I need to do this, and then I should actually follow up and say, and when he told me this, it's like, oh, okay, so it made me realize that I just need to stop in terms of not assuming it's about me and kind of adjusting accordingly, because out of 10 times, I'd be surprised if even one was really what I thought it to be. And when you take the emotion out of it, you kind of learn to play the game in terms of what I should do and how I should handle a situation. And that's not only with my partners and trying to get my ideas across to them, but it's also working with clients and other people that you do and encounter on a daily basis. So
yeah, it's interesting because we have these stories around people, or these stories that we develop, and one of the things that come from that is this us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. And so, like you were saying, I was the woman and they were the men. And we tend to do that between generations. Well, that generation, if they would work harder, or if they would do that, or if this generation would do that. And so we create this division. And so in doing that, it creates a competition. So now we're working against each other because we have to prove we're the right ones, or we have to prove our ideas are better, or we have to, prove why they're wrong. And so that really hits productivity, that really hits everybody rowing in the same direction. And, and it divides us instead of bringing us together, going, look, we're all in the same organization. We're all in this together. We're all trying to achieve the same objectives. And so how can we get past this division and past the us, them, and start looking at each other from the standpoint of we? And even if you look at our political environment, and I don't mean to bring politics into this, but we all want, everybody I talk to, I don't care what, even if they hate politics and don't care about what happens in the political realm, we all want the same thing. We all want to feel valued. We all want to feel connected. We all want to feel like we're making an impact and that what we have to say really matters. And so when we're talking about it from a generational standpoint, how can we really nurture that within our organization? Even if we're not the CEO, even if we're not, the owner of a company, how can we do our part to start nurturing that aspect within organizations? Like, we're all valuable. We all want to contribute. We all want to feel like what we're doing here is really helping the greater whole. So, Stephanie, if you'd like to start, what advice do you have to really bring that within organizations?
Yeah, I think for me, if I find myself that I think I have a problem and I'm starting with someone else and how I describe it, I already know that I'm on the wrong path. It usually starts with me taking some sort of accountability for, okay, what can I do to change whatever it is that I want to change? There's nothing I can do to force somebody else to do something different. It's hard enough for me to do the things that I want to do different. So I think I just always keep in mind that it's probably something that I'm doing and they may have that same perspective about me. And so I just try to work on the things that I should be changing and not point the finger at anybody else. It's difficult, but it has to be done.
I think with that, maybe some patience, and I think I say that is, you know, especially with the Gen Z, like they have everything so immediate. We all do. Everything has become so like, why didn't I get that raise? Why am I not? Why? Where's my food? It should be here in 5 minutes. But I think to your point of like looking at yourself and knowing yourself, and but also don't be afraid to ask or inquire of like how, you know, why is something in the organization, like if we're starting to say you versus me, what's happening around me that's causing me to have that type of feeling. And as I look back at my career, there have been those times of kind of at the fork in the road, and I'm like, do I want to stay at this company? Am I even adding value here? Like I'm working really hard, but I don't feel like anyone is saying that or seeing that. And so with that, I think also one thing I always have done in my career is ask for the meeting with my boss. My past companies were never very good at giving reviews. I don't know how your companies all are, but getting a review sometimes can be very difficult. and just wanting to hear the feedback, good or bad. But it just kind of gives you that feeling of like, okay, am I doing okay? And is this a place I want to stay? And so I think patience, and then also, you know, don't be afraid to ask for the meeting with your boss to say like, what's going on here? Can you help me out, or what can I do better? Instead of just going to the negative.
And we're at time here. Pam, do you have a couple words?
I mean, I agree. You can't assume that people know what you want, and you need to ask for it. Because if you think that your partners or clients or whomever are going to just drop what you need in your lap, you're going to be waiting for a long time. So.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panel.